painting water. So I've been working on this painting here for a few hours now. It's been blocked in, as you've seen. I've started adding the detail of the trees, but we're now going to start working on the water. Pretty easy to actually do. It's very rare on a river or a lake that you get absolute perfect reflection on water. And what I mean by that is, you know, that glass-like reflection where it's a carbon copy of what's above, what it's reflecting. In this instance, we do have a little bit of wind. There's some disturbance on the water, so we get the little horizontal lines. But looking at a reflection, so if you're looking, most reflections, as long as you've got that disturbance, it actually looks like everything is sort of being dragged down. So perhaps it's less obvious on this picture, but it looks like it's a sort of almost like a blend down of everything above. It's almost like it's been smudged. But also within that, we have all the little horizontal lines that we can see from the ripples there. So getting that to look correct it's just a technique. It's not that difficult to do. And I'm going to show you now how I do that. We're going to complete this water in this video, and I'll explain how I do it throughout. So before we start, I just want to mention that I do have an online painting school. There's 55 lessons at the moment. It's growing by one lesson every month. Go and check that out. That's michaeljamesmith.tv. Loads of resources there. Go and have a look at that. Also, the products that I'm going to be using, apart from the paint, the brushes and the panel, are all available from my store website, shopmichaeljamesmith.com. So please check those out. Also, social media, I'm going to scroll that somewhere, either at the top or at the bottom here, but we have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Patreon. Check out my Patreon page as well. Anyway, right, let's get painting. So we do have the area here of blocking. I've just added, just to the bottom of this area here, I've just started to add a little bit of paint on the water. But this blocking is very crude, so we need to pretty much cover over this. And as I explained, we're going to do downward brush strokes mostly, getting all of this covered in, then we'll add the details afterwards. So let's start on that now. So I'm going to use the Series 7 size 8 for this. It's just a flat, soft, synthetic brush. Available also shopmichaeljamesmith.com, among other brushes, but these are the brush we're going to use to begin with. And I'm going to start, as always, at the furthest point and work our way forward down to the bottom here, the front of the painting. Okay, so with this, as I said, I'm going to do vertical brush strokes, trying to keep the paint as smooth on the panel as possible, no impasto, and we're trying to mimic obviously what we can see above. It does change slightly because you have the ripples, so it won't be a carbon copy of what is above, but it'll be near. So as you can see, these distant reflections, let me just zoom in on that for you a little. So as you can see, the distant reflections, although we do have a lot of horizontal marks in there as well, because they're further back, it's difficult to see those horizontals, and it just appears as if it's a vertical brushstroke. And as you can see, I've been just adding little marks there. Okay, right. Now I'm going to continue with the darker colours, and we're going to start working on this area here, and then we can go ahead and add the lighter reflection of the sky. So I'm going to continue with the same brush, Series 7 size 8, work on this part here. Same principle, just downward strokes to begin with. Okay, so that's the reflections of the trees, almost like another block in, really. A lot more colour to go in there, a lot more detail, but before we do that, we're going to work on the area of water here. So just going to mix up, starting with a lighter blue at the top, and then bringing that down into a much darker blue. Okay, so we really don't need to go into, sort of drag the white into the darker colour at this stage. So I'm trying to avoid as much as I can going into the dark, because what happens is you then drag. Can you see you're dragging this down? So I'm trying to do that, or trying not to do that. So continuing then as we move further down, continuing to add blue. Another thing I'll mention is the reflection of whatever is reflecting. The reflection itself is usually darker. So, for example, the foliage here, the reflection will be slightly darker, not a lot darker, but slightly darker. The same is true of the sky. The sky reflection here will be much darker than what it's actually reflecting above. Something there that's worth noting. So, going to start working on the reflection of this foliage here to begin with, so it's nice and light. We just need to add that into this part here. So, there are different ways that we can do that. We can continue to work with the Series 7 size 8, but another option would be to use the Coma, the Series 5 size 3/8. It's also available from the website, but this is very good for this sort of thing. So, because we have, as you can see, the we have 5 points to the brush. We can get more brush strokes. This is a really good trick that I'm going to show you. We have the paint on there. Now we want to get some horizontal lines in there as well. We've already got the downward lines, we need some horizontal. Now one really good way of doing this is to have a clean brush. So this is the same brush, the same Coma brush that we were using to do the downward brush strokes. Now we're going to do the horizontal, but this time there's no paint on it. I've cleaned it with thinner, but I haven't taken all of the thinner off. I mean, there's not enough on there that it's going to drip or anything like that, but there is some on there. You can see that the brush is just a little bit wet with thinner, and then what I'm going to do is just drag over the top with the thinner on the brush, just little horizontal brush strokes. So I'm not putting any more paint on, I'm just disturbing the paint that is already on the panel. And we can go over the whole thing like that. Just little horizontal brush strokes. Okay, so we're going to continue adding details to that in a minute, but before I do that, I'm going to start working on the area where the reflected foliage meets the reflected sky. And we're going to do that with the Series 1 size 0, the rigger brush.